Coming right out of the box on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel live tonight with our version of Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen. As you know by now, all presented by Stateside Vodka. Go to statesidevodka.com, use the promo code JAKIB, get 15% off of a 1-liter bottle. Use that promo code if you're in Pennsylvania, and Stateside will deliver it right to your front door. Johnny Mack, welcome in here. Back to work is the team. There was some activity today. Carolina made a trade. I was listening en route back to home this evening. I was listening to Carolina GM on NFL radio on Sirius XM, Scott Federer, talking about his decision to make the trade today with the Patriots.
Yeah, and it kind of tells you Carolina thinks they have a little bit of an opportunity to make a run at the playoffs, getting a player like Stephon Gilmore. So the Patriots made it clear to the rest of the league they were going to release him. So if you want to get him, you got to trade for him. And obviously they didn't get a ton in return because Gilmore makes a lot of money. So Carolina has to pick up that contract. He's also on the PUP list, so they're going to have to wait for him. Eagles fans don't have to worry about him showing up this week. Even if he could, he probably can't get ready, but he's got to be on the PUP list till after week 6. So there's still going to be a couple more weeks, but it is an interesting movement. I thought Green Bay would probably be the team to go heavily, and they did want Stephon Gilmore. A lot of teams wanted Stephon Gilmore. I got to tell you, I'm just happy that NFL teams move quickly, so I don't have to answer all the questions about why the Eagles aren't a landing spot for Stephon Gilmore. So it's quickly over. Don't have to worry about it.
Can I ask you, did the Eagles have any interest in Stephon Gilmore?
No, I think it's more of, I think everybody would have an interest in that kind of player in a quarterback deficient league. Eagles aren't in a position. If this were the 2017 to 2019 Eagles, yeah, they would have been heavily involved when they thought they were contenders. This is a guy who wants to play with a contender, wants to be with a chance to win. So he would not have wanted to come to Philadelphia at this particular time. It's just not a fit for this team at this time.
Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen joining us here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, as he does every evening. We're live tonight here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Team went back to work. Let's get some updates. When I was part of Civilization a little bit earlier this afternoon, I did see some Twitter activity about Lane Johnson returning to Philadelphia. What is the very latest, John? What do you know? Did Lane return to Philadelphia today?
He is in the area. It's interesting. John Clark, and I saw him down there, was the one who first reported Lane was returning from, I believe, Oklahoma, not Texas. And he was going to be at the Eagles facility. So he was not there when we were there. He was certainly not there when Nick Sirianni had his morning press conference. Did not expect him at that point. He may have shown up to the NovaCare complex later in the afternoon. But he was not, obviously was not there for practice, and there is no change on the front. The Eagles are still saying it's a personal matter. From everything I've heard behind the scenes, they do not expect him to play in Carolina, and we'll see. At some point, they're going to have to address this situation and kind of, even if you want to lean on that, it's a personal matter, you don't want to get into it. You do have to address the football side. When do you expect him back, or do you not expect him back? So you do have to address that side of it. The Eagles are going to have to do that at some point.
if they're not under an obligation, and perhaps they're not, listen, a personal situation is a personal situation. So the Eagles may or may not be under an obligation. But as you said, you need to talk about the football side of it and what that means. They're the game on Sunday against Carolina. It's a better defense. They're going to face a better defense than they did against Kansas City. They're going to face a better defense than they did against the Dallas Cowboys. The offensive line going into the game against Kansas City was 80% down or different, however you want to describe it, from what it was when the season began. So what does it look like, John, right now? And perhaps what it looks like now is not what it will look like when we get to game day on Sunday.
I think a lot of it depends on Jordan Mailata, if he's able to play, and he was back at practice in a limited fashion today, had a big brace on his knee, a sprained knee. But I mean, that's a positive step. So if Jordan is back, which is the hope, and he can get through this week and get back in the lineup, I think you're going to see more shuffling. And I think, and this is just speculation, but I think you're going to see him the one moving. I think you're going to see Andre Dillard at left tackle, Jordan Mailata playing right tackle in place of Lane Johnson. I think you'll have Jack Driscoll slide inside the right guard where he's supposed to start against Kansas City until the late scratch of Lane Johnson. And then Landon Dickerson will remain at left guard. Jason Kelsey, obviously, the one starter that we know is going to be in there, although even Jason is dealing with a foot injury. And he rested today. It was more of a rest day, more of a veteran management day, load management day for Jason Kelsey. So they expect him to play. I think you're going to see Jordan Mailata at right tackle and Andre Dillard at left tackle, which is interesting because, Jordan's the one who just started playing football 4 years ago, and they're more comfortable with him moving than they are with Andre Dillard.
Jordan back at practice today. What was the extent, John, of Mailata's injury, and does the timeline match up to what the injury was? I'm asking because I don't know.
Yeah, he had sprained his knee. It was the least serious level. You have grades 1 through 4. It was the least serious level. That generally is a 2 or 3 week injury. He's missed 2 games. If he wasn't able to make it against Carolina, it would be 3 games. So he's right in that category, right where he should be when you have that type of sprained knee, which is the best case scenario. If it was a grade 4, you're talking about an 8-week injury. So Eagles kind of lucked out with how serious that knee sprain was.
Going into the game this week, Johnny Mac, I saw another post today, and I know I'm bouncing all over the place, but just trying to set the table and understand what this game's going to ultimately look like when we get to Sunday. Yesterday, when we completed football 24/7, I didn't expect Sean McCaffrey to play against the Eagles on Sunday. Now, I did see reports today that he was practicing today and he could return Sunday against the Eagles. What do you know?
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey is obviously
Christian,
their best offensive player, one of the best offensive players in pro football, to be honest, when he's healthy. Hasn't been healthy a lot over the past 2 years. Dealing with a hamstring issue. From what I've been told from people in Carolina, they expect him to play this week, and we'll see. Hamstrings are always tricky with skill position players because the last thing you want to do is push it. Now that's bad news if he's able to go out there for obviously from the Eagles standpoint, as I said, probably their best overall player, period, no matter the position, no matter the side of the football. But they do have two key players who are not expected to play, and that's linebacker Shaq Thompson, who's having a big year, and their left tackle Cameron Irving. And they have this is one of those teams where we always talk about this being an offensive line deficient league. They're not good when they're healthy on the offensive line, and they have some injuries. So this could be a game where Josh Sweat and Derek Barnett and Fletcher Cox can get back on track if things go well from that standpoint.
What does Jonathan Gannon have to do to get Fletcher and the front four of his defense back on track?
Well, it might be just showing up. As I said, if you look at that, Cameron Irving is their starting left tackle, is probably, not one of the better left tackles to begin with. They have Trent Scott, who is a guy they picked up on waivers from the Chargers. Not a high-level player. They do have a third-round pick, Brady Christensen, who they might throw in there. But they're in dire straits to the point that, you're talking about Scott Fitterer making a trade for Stephon Gilmore. He's been calling all around this league as well to try to pick up offensive linemen. And nobody's given up offensive linemen because of their worth. And this is a situation where, Andre Dillard is playing well. Now he's been lucky. You got to be honest. No DeMarcus Lawrence in Dallas. Frank Clark wasn't able to play for Kansas City. But bottom line is he's played pretty well when he's been forced into the lineup. So if you can kind of fast forward this thing to November 2nd, I believe is the trade deadline. If Andre Dillard plays this week, plays well again, all of a sudden you're going to have a lot of teams calling the Eagles about Andre Dillard. Hopefully Lane Johnson's back by that point. Jordan Mailata's healthy. You can go back to your original plan, and maybe you can get something for Andre Dillard.
Well, would you do that if Lane's back and Mailata's back healthy? Would you do that based on the statement that you just made about, offensive linemen, the big uglies being at such a premium? Would you do that anyway?
Well, a lot of it has to do with Lane Johnson. There's such uncertainty with Lane right now. But from a left tackle standpoint, the Eagles have already made their decision. They picked Jordan Mailata. They signed him to the extension. And by the way, he earned it and won the job. Now, what can complicate matters is, and these are all good problems to have, if Andre Dillard continues to play well, as I said, the Eagles have confidence that Jordan Mailata can play right tackle. So if Lane Johnson's going to be out, they might not want to move him. Just keep him on left tackle, have Jordan play right tackle. So it's a nice problem to have, and it's it's we're not talking about a lot of positives with the Eagles right now. Their depth on the offensive line is pretty significant positive.
That's actually where I was going to go, Johnny Mac, in terms of depth on the offensive line. If the starters play out the way you expect them to play out come Sunday, what does the rest of the depth chart look like going into the game against Carolina, assuming Lane is out, Jordan's back, but you don't know how healthy Jordan is. You're assuming he's going to be able to play. And even if he's on the right side, you're assuming he's going to be able to hold up. What's the rest of it look like? Suapeta, I think, was put on, on the COVID list. What does the rest of it look like behind the five starters on Sunday? Right now, at least right now.
Yeah, you still have Brett Toth, remember, who had a very good training camp, and he's your swing tackle, so that's pretty good. Nate Herbig is your interior backup, and he was taking reps at center today because Jason Kelsey didn't practice. So, Nate had to step in last week, start at right guard, did a good job with 2 hours notice. So, again, It's a pretty impressive group. Carolina loses one offensive lineman, and they're picking up the phone, trying to go outside the organization to get somebody. So, we always talk about positives. It might not be sexy, certainly, when you talk about the offensive line. But, man, this team is deep on the offensive line.
Football 24/7 with NFL insider John McMullen across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, share, and continue to subscribe as we roll along into what is week 5, right? We in week 5, John? We are.
We are in week 5. We're 1 and 3.
Going into week 5. A part of that other conversation, by the way, on NFL Radio Sirius XM with the Carolina GM. They love how well Darnold is playing and how well he's running that offense. Now, I don't know this to be 100% accurate, but the energy in Scott's voice almost appeared that they were over the moon excited about how well he's playing in Carolina. And he's the reason this Carolina team has a 3-1 record and is playing pretty good football.
Well, yeah, they are playing pretty good football, and they are a little bit better, certainly, than I thought. I looked at this game before the season started, said, this is a winnable game. Not to say the Eagles would win it, but it's a team that if you play well, you can probably find a way to win the football game late. Is that changed? I don't know. I will say, look, their early schedule has been pretty easy. New York Jets, week 1, they beat them by 5 points. They were pretty impressive against the Saints, which is an okay team, but not what they were with Drew Brees. That was probably their most impressive performance. And then they beat the Houston Texans in week 3. Now, if you talk to most people around the league, who are the 2 least talented teams in the NFL, you're going to come back with Jets and Texans every time. So, I mean, that's teams you should beat. And to their credit, they did beat, but they're not impressive wins.
They did have Dallas on. They did have Dallas, I don't want to say on the ropes, but they played Dallas really strong, at least in the first half of that game.
That was probably their most impressive performance, and they lost. That's sort of the NFL. Dallas is playing very well, and you're right. They stayed in the football game, and they were able to stay near that explosive offense. You saw what they did to the Eagles. They were able to score 36 against the Panthers as well. So, but it was at one time, it was 36-14, so look, I didn't watch the game in real time, but when I see 36-14, I start thinking a little bit of garbage time, and maybe Dallas let, foot off the gas. And that's kind of what happened. And obviously 36-14 turns into 36-28, and it looks better at the end of the game, but it really wasn't that good. That's what I think happened against Dallas.
Talk about offensively, Johnny Mac, from Jalen Hurts and from the Eagle offensive side of the football. Nick, of course, head coach Nick Sirianni, I think felt pretty good about his game plan against Kansas City. I mean, so good that at one point towards the end of the game, watching just on the television, watching Nick in conversation with Jalen, and then I believe he was in conversation with Zach Ertz. This was towards the very end of the game. I don't want to say he was laughing or anything like that, but he had his arm around him. He was chuckling a little bit. He was in a little bit of a conversation. But that body language tells me he felt pretty good, about his offensive game plan in the game against Kansas City, a high flying Kansas City Chiefs. So I assume based on that, he's bringing that type of confidence into this week's game plan. I don't know if that means he's figured it out, but I assume that to be true.
Well, I'm also going to be fair to the Carolina fans as well, in that, look, Kansas City's defense is terrible. It's every bit as bad as their offense is good. So how much of it is great game plan? How much is that, or how much it is Kansas City can't stop Joe Krause and John McMullen, basically? A little bit of both, probably, to be honest. Carolina is going to bring a much better defense to the table, but they're not going to be as explosive offensively. So it's going to be a different type of game. It's going to be much more difficult for the offense, most likely, and it's going to be much easier for the Eagles defense, which they need a breather after facing Dallas and Kansas City. Now, having Christian McCaffrey back doesn't help if he's able to go, and that'll make Carolina a little bit more difficult, but still, it's not Kansas City. It's still not Dallas. So I think you're going to have a different game, and that's what the NFL is about. Nick constantly talks about it. Every game plan is different. Every opponent is different. You're not going to play the Carolina Panthers the same way you played the Kansas City Chiefs. You shouldn't. If you go in with the same game plan, you're not doing your job.
Well, you're going in with the same offense. You're going in with a run RPO offense, right? You're going to distribute the ball you're going to use Gainwell the way they're using Gainwell and the way Gainwell was used in college. You're going to use him. Now, Devontae Smith had a great, quiet, but, great 120 yards. I thought it was a little quiet. I was actually surprised when I saw the number over 120, but then they didn't target Quez very, very often. They didn't. I think Rager was only targeted once, but more of the tight ends were used in the game on last week against Kansas City.
Yeah, and remember, you saw a lot of Kenny Gainwell because of how the game went and because you're behind. Now, there's a perfect example. In this game, you would prefer to get back to what you always want to do, and certainly what the Eagles want to do even more than most teams, and that's play from the lead. And if you're playing from the lead, you're going to see more Miles Sanders than Kenny Gainwell. You take a look at what's going on in the Carolina secondary. Remember, as I said, Stephon Gilmore is not going to be out there. So you have Dante Jackson, who's having a good season. But the other corner is a rookie, Keith Taylor. We'll see if they get C.J. Henderson. They traded for him recently as well. If he gets more of a sped up sort of introductory process to that defense. So maybe you want to go in different directions. Maybe they're going to have him on Quez Watkins. Maybe they're going to have him on Jalen Rager, and you have to go away from Devontae Smith. Again, much more accomplished defense, certainly up front than Kansas City, which was Chris Jones and nobody. This group has more playmakers. Brian Burns is a good pass rusher. People might remember Hassan Reddick from Temple. He's there as an edge rusher as well. As I mentioned, they're getting a bit of a break with no Shaq Thompson, who's having a really good season. But their defensive line, Derek Brown, too, is one of the young up-and-coming interior linemen in this league. Daquan Jones is a good player. They're really good up front. So maybe the offensive line isn't as effective as it was against Kansas City. A lot of moving parts. It's never the same in this league.
John, what's the fix for when the Eagles offense gets into the red zone? What's the fix for converting touchdowns?
No penalties. They scored touchdowns. They just got called back 3 times. Now, one is easy. Devontae Smith has got to run a better route. That wasn't the red zone, though. He scored from 34 or 36 yards out. He's just got to be more aware of where he is on the football field. And that's a rookie mistake, and you hope he learns from it and doesn't make the same mistake again. With the illegal man downfield penalties, we've been talking about it. You're running all these RPOs in a year where the league has made it a point of emphasis that if you go down more than a yard and a half, and in college, remember, these guys are running all this in college. In college, the rule is different. You can go 3 yards down the field and they won't call it. In the pros, it's 1.5 yards. So, they have to get used to that more stringent rule to begin with. And then you got to get the timing right on that. So that's just a timing issue. And then J.J. Arcega-Whiteside with the offensive pass interference. Look, that's just a savvy veteran move where you see veteran receivers do it all the time. It's offensive pass interference. Make no mistake, but they're savvy enough to leave their hands down. Essentially, it's a pick play in basketball. Just get in his way, but make it look like you're running a route. You're not really running a route, but you got to make it look like you are and just get in the defensive back's way, and you got an easy touchdown.
Last thing from John McMullen here on Football 24/7. And boy, I hope I'm getting this right because I know I have referenced Barrett Brooks referencing Johnny Mack that what kind of football team you have after 4 games. Now, I'm wondering to myself, did Barrett say after 4 games or after 6 games? On the chance that he said after 6 games, I'm going to ask if we know what kind of football team we have after 4. I'm not sure. What do you think?
Barrett, number one, he said after 4.
After 4. Okay.
He always says after 4, but I think it's a little bit different this year because if this was Doug Peterson, if this was Jim Schwartz, I could tell you what you have in this team because you not only know the players, you know the coaching staff. We don't know this coaching staff. So it might be 6 games. It might be 7 games. It might be 8 games. It might be half a season. Everything's new. Everything is learning on the job. And we're going to continue that. And I told people that back in the summer. If you don't think there's going to be hiccups with a first-year head coach, I had Colin Thompson on Birds 365, our buddy from the Carolina Panthers. And I asked him about Matt Rule because Colin has been with Matt Rule for a long time, dating back to his days at Temple. And I said, what's the difference between Matt Rule in his second year as a head coach in the NFL versus his first year? Because everyone says it's such a big job, but Colin pointed out and he coached he was a head coach at Baylor. He was a head coach at Temple. Not the same level, but the same job. You're in charge of everything, all encompassing. So he had a little bit of an advantage. Nick Sirianni's never done this before, man. Never. I asked him today about Jonathan Gannon and the defensive side of the football and calling timeout when Tyreek Hill gets a one-on-one matchup with Eric Wilson. Look, we talked about that on the show, I think, yesterday. You either got to give Jonathan Gannon the autonomy to call timeout if he wants to, and I'm not saying he wanted to because JG didn't say he wanted to call timeout. But the point is he's got to have the autonomy to do so, or you got to be in the weeds. You got to be in the weeds and understand the situation. And you better be right there with the defensive coordinator. And it says, hey, we're going to get killed here. We're going to give up a touchdown. You know, these are all the things you don't learn by being a coordinator. You only learn by being the guy in charge. And that's why it's on-the-job training.
How did
and
he answer that
on-the-job
question,
training
John?
Can get kind of ugly at times, Krause.
Did he answer that question? What he said?
Yeah, he answered it. And he said he goes down in those types of situations and he stands next to Gannon in case he has to alert him of something. But again, these are all learning on the job circumstances. Has never done it before. You can ask other people how it's done, but until you do it, and remember, they're not talking like in football 24/7. I'm thinking about it for 24 hours. You got 40 seconds to make decisions, and you can't even communicate to the players. Remember, that communication cuts off at 15 seconds. This stuff is bang, bang. And when I mean bang, bang, if you've ever been on the sidelines of an NFL game, whoo, things happen quickly.
Football 24/7 with John McMullen across the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, getting it done on a Wednesday night, all presented by Stateside Vodka. Do what so many of our subscribers have done so far. They've gone to statesidevodka.com. They've used the term JAKIB, and they've gotten 15% off of a 1 liter bottle. Now, you can't get
do it early.
Do it early.
And you get a free glass on top of it.
John, you're watching the spots. I love it. Great stuff.
That spot.
It is a great commercial. No doubt about that. Great stuff, Johnny Mac. Are you back tomorrow morning on Birds 365?
I am back tomorrow morning. Then I jet off to practice. We're going to have Ryan Paganetti, former Eagles assistant coach under Doug Peterson, analytics guy. So he's going to be talking some fourth down decisions with us and what the Eagles should have done, or maybe they did the right thing. We'll find out tomorrow.
Well, if he duplicates his first appearance on Birds 365, should be must watch or must check out if you miss it live tomorrow, Birds 365 on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. On behalf of all of our viewers, and of course, on behalf of John McMullen and Xander Krause, I'm Joe Krause. Good night, everyone.